All right, Fat Boys, I'm actually curious on who's going to watch this one. I'm going to try and pump you up and say I'm doing a preview later, which I am, but we only had 4 of our 10 teams actually in a matchup this week. So while I was personally extremely invested, I don't know if everyone was. Maybe some of the other top 4, the 2 people on the bye, Underhill and Jake, maybe you were looking to see who you were going to play. Maybe people were making some picks in advance to see if they could sneak out something, an advantage for week 16. Or maybe people just were flying home for the holidays and they were trying to figure out their life, and that might be more important. Speaking of which, let's get down to the big quick recap. You'll notice one big change. I'm not talking about the NFL this week. That's because it's all about us. I will save the NFL stuff. I got some things planned for the end of the year, but right now it's all about fantasy. It's all about week 15. We only had a couple matchups. Everyone else went straight to the semis or the consolation semis, so there was just 4 of us that were sweating it out. And when I say sweating it out, I actually mean it. I was up watching every of the night games, the benefit of being in Canada. Last night, I do not think too many people had a similar experience to me, but let me walk you through it quickly. Philadelphia, Seattle. Philadelphia had tons of chances to just run the clock out, and for whatever reason, they just kept punting the ball back to Seattle. Metcalf had done nothing pretty much all game, and then those last couple drives, they start picking. That last drive, he catches one for I think 18, and another one for like 30 or something like that. I'm sweating it out because I finally do the math. I don't know if other people are in the same boat, but I'm always like, well, if it's in 6.5, we know we're in touchdown range because the catch plus the action. So once we got within that, I almost was closing my eyes. I see a float from Locke. I see the receiver come down, but for whatever reason, I got kind of lost as to where DK was. I was pretty much following him most of the game. I didn't think it's him who caught the ball. Then I see the rookie, Smith and Jigba, come up with it. Whew, big sigh of relief. But Ben, you put me right to the wire. How'd you do so? Now, Mahomes, you got to be getting frustrated, pal. Now, pretty much, I don't think everyone's figured this out, or most people probably have, that you just take Mahomes early. So you've had Mahomes for the majority of the last couple seasons, I think. But you've never had Tony come out there and be the worst weapon. Not only is he occasionally offside on plays, as we've learned, he seems to like to tip the ball to the other team. So if people were watching, I think there's at least 4 or 5 interceptions this year that you can attribute to Kadarius Toney just giving it, or just popping it to the other team. So no bueno there. That could have helped you out. Wilson is probably your biggest regret, because if you look down, you did in fact have McLovin, who was our wide receiver 3. Him in for Wilson would have helped out, but you made a lot of great plays. I mean, Tucker as a kicker, he was our kicker 4, only to be outdone slightly by my kicker 3. Mustard had a great outing. McBride was our tight end, I think also 3. Yeah, there it is, tight end 3. So you out tight ended me, considering my tight end was my first round pick. That looks pretty good for you. And realistically, I had this up to 91% to start, or at some point during the 4 o'clock games. And then McCaffrey did McCaffrey things. And if people were even watching that game, he was so open on his touchdown reception that he actually fell over, got up, and kind of slowly meandered into the end zone. He's on another level, and anyone playing him needs to know that. So, Ben, they brought you back in. On my side, I think the biggest thing that saved me, I did make the one pick of Lawrence on the bench for Love because I like the Tampa Bay matchup. That helped me out by a couple points, but the biggest one, I did bench Walker, who did well. Maybe I could have put him in for Kamara, but actually Chandler went off on a last-minute pickup. He was the running back 4, Williams running back 5. So the running backs literally ran me over the finish line. So the Olave injury and the Collins injury didn't hurt me too much, even though the guy I picked up did 3/5 of nothing. So I move on. Ben, you go to the 5-6 matchup. Great matchup, though, buddy. I know you're not feeling it right now, but it came down to the wire, so well done, sir. And the only other one that matters, we had our Battle of the Consonants, was slightly more disappointing. This one was kind of a runaway. B, you had some bad luck. You were underperforming, but Will, you came out, and that's not taking anything away from you. You had a few pretty epic matches and performances. So B, for you, I think your Njoku kind of coming through in his developing the relationship with Flacco has been huge for you in the last couple of weeks. He was our tight end 2, and pretty much everybody else underperformed. Even CeeDee Lamb, who did fine, he's been carrying you for some weeks. Moore has gone off for weeks. Fields couldn't figure out Cleveland's defense. So unfortunately for you, when that kind of happened, I think we all saw the writing was on the wall. In terms of your bench options, Indy would have been a better pick, but not by that much. Reed would have been a good pick, but realistically, you just needed your horses to go off, and they didn't. V, congratulations, buddy. You're riding that Stafford wave. He just seems to be consistently putting up points for you. Debo, they didn't really need him, but they're still using him. 19 points is fantastic. He was out of the top 5, but I would take it in any way. Same with Evans, great performance. But your 2 big studs, Miami's defense, a monster defensive performance. They are our defense 2, but the other defense wasn't started, and not because most other teams weren't playing, but because no one has Vegas's defense. So apparently the lesson is learned. Go find the Chargers, pick the other team. Although, drop the coach. There's sometimes that coach theory. Anyway, we'll save that for later. And Laporta is your new stud at tight end, already taking over. He'll be gunning for tight end 1 of the year at this point. He's not quite there, but he's getting close. He was our tight end 1 of the week, though. So V, you live to see another day. B, you're going to see Ben, the other B, in the battle for 5th. And now our top 4 set. Let's take a look at next week's projections. As mentioned, 15 was not a very frequented week, so we bump over here to week 16. We've got our top 4 still in it. We've got our 5th and our consolation. I am going to go through each matchup just quickly to see what we're looking in for as we head for our quarterfinals or semifinals in week 16. Consolation first, we've got the Rhinos and the Crunchy Hippies. Chaz, you have not been an easy win the last little while, and we can see why. You actually last week would not have been the guy to play. Last week, had you been playing someone, you had Cup, who had another finally coming back to form. Now he's got a couple weeks to prove it. He was our wide receiver 4. Waddle was our wide receiver 2. So you would have had tons of points just on your wide receivers alone. Even Gibbs, though obviously you wouldn't have put Madison in, but Gibbs also had a great week. He was our running back 3. So projected moving forward, none of them are in the top 5 projections except for your boy Brown. But as we know, projections are schmishmections. We don't really care what they say. Now, Trubisky will not be playing because Rudolph the Red-Nosed Quarterback's getting in for Christmas weekend, so maybe there's some luck there. I should also mention, you had Addison, which was our wide receiver 1. So you had 3 receivers in the top 5. If you can put that together against anyone, you're going to be tough. Horst, you know you're competitive. You got the number 1 projection in quarterback. Hurts is supposed to have the best week. You got Jefferson coming back off the bye. You're starting another member of our group in Jake Ferguson. He's often putting up points. Breece Hall randomly, even though he's actually disappointed you a lot in the last couple weeks, he is projected to be a top 5 running back because of his matchup against Washington. And on the bench, you got some options here. Obviously, Smith is always someone who can have a punch. Is CJ coming back? We don't know. Now, in some cases, I would say, let's see if you guys even check. I have a sneaky suspicion that both of you will be checking, both of you will be making adds and drops, and both of you are going for that consolation championship, even if it's just for pride. So best of luck in this semi. In the other semifinal, we got Waylon, who's kind of disappointed. He was just one of the last ones in, and it really was a couple matchups that cost him, versus Rothwell, who had a monster comeback. You started off pretty poor, and you could tell I goaded you a couple times with your dynasty being in question, and you took it seriously. You made a push. You fell short, but the best way to come back and do it for each one of you is to go after that consolation title. So let's see how we're doing. Mark, you've been riding the Purdy wave. No, he's the real life MVP candidate. Fantasy, he's just starting to become one, but he did have 4 touchdowns last week, so that's not so bad. Buffalo is always a kicking threat, and especially if they're not in Buffalo during a storm, which they will not be. San Francisco's defense has gotten you a lot of points, although caution with Bijan. He goes from 25 carries to 5 carries to 25 carries, so that's a roller coaster. Pollard against Miami, that's a roller coaster. And San Francisco, I bet you wishing they were playing anyone but an offense like Baltimore that can move, but San Fran has shown they're probably the studs of the league. Waylon, unfortunately, you did not benefit from Cook's performance last week. He had a monster. He was the running back 2. McCaffrey's the only one who beat him, and not by much. Over 200 all-purpose yards, so you're probably hoping for something similar. Similar with TJ Hawkinson. He goes up and down, but has been fairly consistent as one of our top 5 tight ends each week. He's predicted to continue to do the same. In terms of your benches, you got some choices to make. Pacheco possibly coming back. Ridley, Dax against Miami. How are we going to balance that with Tua? You've got one quarterback on one side of the matchup, so who you're going to go with, I guess we'll see. So the other consolation looks like it's going to be tight, so best luck to both of you in terms of getting into the consolation final. I'm not going to pretend I like being in the 5-6 game. I've been there. We all have at some point in time. You're a little disappointed. Your season's ending, but you're still in the champion side. So you're not like playing for the consolation, but you're really just playing for pride in that spot. And that's why I like to watch this particular game, because we get to see who takes it seriously. Now, in the Battle of the Bees, I got to think that both of you take this seriously enough. However, it is Christmas time and you will be traveling, so let's see how it goes. Yahoo can't even decide. They say it's a coin toss, 50-50. I'd say both quarterbacks have good matchups. That could go either way. Your wide receivers, I'd say CeeDee Lamb and Moore probably have the edge here. But let's be honest, McCaffrey, Mustard, and running back, I think you got the massive edge there. These have been two of our upstart tight ends. I'm actually going to call this one even. It really comes down to matchups and who gets the touchdown. I'd say the same with your flex. Paca Nacua can go often, especially against the Saints. We'll know early and often on the Thursday versus Achane if that's who you decide to put in. Knowing you two, I think Kansas City's going to stick. Your kickers are definitely going to stick. I don't know if this is the matchup Ben's going to look for, if he's going to go shopping for a defense. He does have Philly Giants. I'm not trying to tell him how to act, but even that or the Rams, New Orleans, put it this way, he's got options. I'd say the same B. I like your Kansas City Vegas, but you got some options on the bench. Stevenson might be coming back. Robinson should be coming back. So I don't expect this to be the exact roster, but I do expect the competitive spirit to be there. So best of luck in the 5-6, gents. In our championship side, our top four is decided. Now, I am not starting with this one because I'm involved. Usually I do the opposite, but because Jake is our number one, he deserves the attention and all the pressure. Everything's on him. See if I can pile that on. I don't think it'll make a difference. He doesn't seem to care. One of the biggest things that's going to actually determine this is this gentleman right here. Tyreek Hill pulled himself out of the last game. Now, the coach did say before it was Tyreek's choice. A little controversial. He was seen standing and walking pretty fine, not gingerly on the sideline. Now, though, maybe he thought Jets don't really need it. Plus, he's said a couple times he's a very explosive player. He doesn't like going out and having something there because if you're explosive, you can actually do a lot of damage. So I would say if I'm Hill, just take this week off. You're fine. Miami doesn't need you against Dallas. Dallas doesn't play well on the road anyway, so take it off. Only benefit I got going on matchup-wise, Baltimore against San Francisco could be tricky, but I'm not going to lie to you, I've watched enough of the 49ers. I actually think the running quarterback, the mobile quarterback, could be dangerous, so this should be super interesting. You got an awesome defensive matchup. You went and got the Jets against Washington. I believe that's something you did shopping a week in advance. It's the benefit of having that bye. And if Taylor comes back against Atlanta, that's a big ding to this guy over here. For me, I'm going to be relying on my running backs because apparently I can't pay attention to my tight end. I'm not buying the thing that he's distracted, but he needs more of a distraction. He needs more Kansas City people to do things so he can be open, and that would be helpful. My wide receivers, if they're both healthy, that would be great to know. Don't love the fact that Olave, I'm going to have to make that mind up on Thursday. I like it because then I know ahead of time what's going on, but it gives them a couple less days to be healthy. My quarterbacks haven't fully made that decision yet, and my defense, I like Cleveland. Houston's not really who I want to play in this week, but let's see how it goes. Either way, Yahoo can't really make up its mind. It says it's a coin toss too. So, Jake, best of luck, pal. It's going to be tight, hopefully. Or I can just win. Up to you. The other semis looking not as tight here, but let's be honest, so many things are going to happen between now and then, because even if we look down at the bench, Will, you had some health issues. Like right now, Chase, it goes back and forth. The last screen I was on had him playing this weekend, and now they're saying maybe not. Jacobs is supposed to play. You got the New Orleans defense against the Rams or Miami and Dallas. That actually is probably my favorite subplot I'll get to in a second. So you got choices to be made, but a few things I think fairly strong about. I'd be shocked if Stafford's not in there. Your wide receivers seem pretty set in Evans and Samuel. I think Laporta as a tight end, been a monster. Be shocked if we don't see him there. So we know already kind of what we're looking at. We'll just see the fine touches and who do you decide to ride with. Underhill, I think the biggest thing you got going for you here, Allen's been running the ball a lot more, as have the Bills, but they're playing the Chargers, who everyone in the world can pass off of, so it's going to be super interesting. You have a vested interest in him hitting Diggs up because he was not really looking for him for the last couple weeks, so we'll see how that goes. If your running backs are healthy, you got two old vets to get you points. If they're not, you might have to look at some options here. Moss potentially could still get the start. We don't know about Taylor. It's pretty early days, but I think the coolest thing about this is one of the best matchups in actual football is Miami-Dallas. And your defense comes down to Miami-Dallas. How is that not exciting? Maybe you won't go that way. Maybe you'll decide something different come game time. Maybe this is going to be a waiver wire pickup at some point. But come on, man. You can't just write that stuff. So best of luck. I hope to see the victor next week. If not, I'll see the loser. We'll see how mine goes. But for your matchup, best of luck, gentlemen. Battle of Korea. Let's see what happens. Now it's all about Week 16. For the consolation, we know our 4, you know the matchups. Our 5, 6, they know each other. Now our top 4, the ones we're going to be paying attention probably the most, although, let's be honest, some of you are so competitive, it doesn't matter what you're playing for. It's about the pride of doing it. Now remember, only top 3 get a little bit of cash. Our number 1 gets a little bit, so it really is shaping out the next week or two. We'll figure out all that mess. But right now, you got a couple things to focus on. One, remember, it's not how many points you score, it's how many more points you can score than the person against. So after the waivers clear and we see some moves, we will get to see who is against who you're cheering for, who you're cheering against. One word of caution there, do continue to pay attention to the schedule. As we know, this season is always a little funky. I think some people were traveling. This league worked out all right, but we only had 4 teams on the go. I am in other leagues, as you know, and in one of them, in a key, pivotal, need to win to get in, somebody was on a flight, didn't take Kyrie out of their lineup. They ended up losing. Big loss. Don't be that person. You will have some games to look at. So we got a Thursday, we got a couple Saturdays, Sunday's Christmas Eve, and that's a normal slate, but slightly less games. And then Monday, there's actually a couple games on Christmas Day. Know what you're doing. Know what your family's doing, and know your limitations here. So make sure your rosters are set and who you have to pay attention to. All that to be said, it is my favorite time of the year, and less about the presents, more about this. But anyway, I wish you all the best of luck, except for Jake. Let's see what happens in week 16.